There are a number of reports surfacing that after raising $1 billion in just 107 days, the Democratic Party in the United States is now $20 million in debt. Now, to chat about this in more detail is U.S. political reporter and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, who joins us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, a lot of money spent by the Democrats, but in the end, it really didn't matter since Trump still got in with his landslide victory.
Right, with a much smaller budget, by the way. This election brought to light many things, but I think one of the things that Americans are very much fed up with is the lack of fiscal responsibility, both on the federal level and local level. If you look at our sanctuary cities, for example, many of them reporting losses and not being able to really budget appropriately, given the number of migrants that are flooding those cities, and having allocated too much money to those causes and not having enough money for other things, just not being able to really spread the budget the way that it is meant to be spread to answer to the needs of everyday Americans. And here you have the Democrat Party spending $1 billion, obviously, on this election, wanting obviously to win, and they have the funds, but obviously we know that money could have been spent in much better and more productive ways.
Lisa, a campaign promise that Trump says he'll follow through on is changing immigration policy in the United States. So many illegal immigrants are now in the U.S., which includes a number of criminals from other countries. We've seen crime go up exponentially in a number of states, and many people are even afraid to leave their own homes.
Right. And, that's really the key here. I heard a lot of people speaking before the election, during the election, after the election, about how Trump is going to deport all the illegal migrants in America. That is A, virtually impossible, and B, just false. Obviously, there has to be a process. We would hope that migrants coming to America would follow the legal process so that it is fair. There's many people who do want to come to this country and do want that opportunity, and we would hope that it would be fair. The issue that we're dealing with is to get rid of the felons, to get rid of those who are on the ISIS and on the Al-Qaeda and on the Taliban list that we know of. And again, these are the ones that have been identified, and that's a large number, a significant number. And think about all the ones who got away that we have not yet identified, who are either known terrorists or wannabe terrorists and are in this country, felons that we know left their own countries because they were running away from the law and now are finding shelter in our country. And again, think about all the people who do want to come here and do want to start over and are in pursuit of the American dream and are losing the opportunity because of the others who are here and are felons and are terrorists. So again, I think this is a very nuanced topic. And I think that if Donald Trump is able to communicate that properly to the American people, I think many and most would be on board with the goal of trying to get rid of them for national security purposes.
And a lot of the illegal immigrants coming across the border into the United States are now making their way across the border into Canada, especially now that Trump has been elected. So we have our concerns here as well. Now, Lisa, now that Trump and the Republicans are back in the White House, in January, will we finally see an end to many of the wars in the world right now, including Ukraine and the Middle East?
It's interesting how just hours after Trump won the election, we already saw some pivoting by our adversaries, which just goes to show you, peace through strength, the deterrence that is established by just the correct posturing. And our enemies know that's why so many of these rogue nations were actually endorsing Kamala Harris over Donald Trump. And think about that. Our enemies should believe that there would be no daylight between a Republican and Democrat candidate when it comes to how we deal with our adversaries and how we deal with our friends. But both our friends, for example, Israel, our main ally in the Middle East, also would prefer Donald Trump to Kamala Harris presidency, knowing that relationship is ironclad. They would have nothing to worry about, whereas the Biden administration and then a Kamala Harris administration would waver on how we deal with Israel and how we micromanage the war that they're dealing with right now. We saw that Hamas, the Houthis, backing down. We saw the Iran regime, who had endorsed Kamala Harris, wanting, obviously, and knowing that they would get a better deal, or perhaps more sanctions relief and more money, and just a desire to normalize relations with them from Kamala Harris and the Biden administration that has given them all of that in the last 4 years, now backing down and saying, you know what, we're ready to deal with whatever Donald Trump throws at us. And it doesn't even matter to us who's in office, which we know is a lie. So just this pivoting, and also China. I do think we will see many changes in a lot of the crises that we're seeing around the world. Hopefully, an end to the Russia-Ukraine war, a backing down of these rogue elements. North Korea doing missile testing, Iran's regime, just curbing its behavior and support of terrorism throughout the region. We're already seeing changes, and it hasn't even been 48 hours. So hopefully, we will see very significant changes in the next 4 years.
And Lisa, the Iran regime has sentenced 4 people to death for their alleged participation in the assassination of a nuclear scientist. Now, the Islamic Republic says they were found guilty of spying for Israel.
Right. So that is one of the kind of accusations that the Iran regime has always used to blame people and say, you're a spy for the enemy. And now the enemy could be Israel. The enemy could be the United States. It just means that you're in opposition to the government. And that just has been, a made up, trumped up charge against those that they want to execute. Now, in recent months, has Israel been able to identify those who are looking to defect and looking to, work with Israel against the regime? Yes, absolutely. So that does exist as well. We saw the killing of some of the top terrorists of the world inside Iran, inside Lebanon, and that was through that kind of help. So yes, they will try to make examples out of these individuals by calling them spies and killing them. Now, because we know that Iran's regime is nervous about so much of Trump coming in and so much of that policy changing, they will go hard against their own, because the message to the Iranian people is, don't you dare protest, don't you dare work against us, don't you dare even think to tweet or post on Facebook or post on Instagram against the regime. And that's the example they are trying to set.
Lisa, let's talk about the hostages for just a moment being held by Hamas in Gaza. I believe there are 101 hostages left. Any chance that they will be released anytime soon by Hamas?
Well, according to the sources that I have spoken to inside Israel, they think it's 50-50. They think half of those hostages may still be alive, and they do believe that half of them have already been killed by Hamas. Now, the question obviously is, why are they still in captivity? Why has it taken more than 1 year and they're still in captivity? And it doesn't look like there's going to be a hostage deal anytime soon, unless Donald Trump is able to do something, and we're months away. Why wouldn't they kill them, between now and then? It's horrific to think that Israel did not have enough support by the international community. And by the way, many foreign nationals among those hostages from many nations of the world that are represented there, and still innocent civilians, many of them young people who were taken from a music festival or from their kibbutz, their village, their communities, and being held in tunnels by this horrific terror organization.
October 7th, a day we will not soon forget. Lisa, the other terrorist group funded by Iran, Hezbollah, published a map showing the locations of the Israel Defense Forces along the Lebanese border.
Right, not backing down anytime soon. Look, Israel is making its way through very targeted locations where the Hezbollah strongholds are inside Lebanon, and they're retaliating. They're looking to answer, and then by threatening Israel with these kinds of productions and saying, we know where you are, we're going to come after you. Now, has Hezbollah been able to make that kind of damage or those kinds of strikes against Israel? More than we would like to see. And then I think Israeli officials have seen them get closer and closer. Yesterday, we had a hit close to Ben Gurion Airport, which is the main international airport inside Israel. So they are getting closer, but not enough to cause any sort of real collateral damage. Now, the people who live in harm's way, northern Israel, have been evacuated. We'd like to see them go back to their homes. We'd like to see all Israelis live normal lives, away from bomb shelters, away from worrying about their loved ones who are in battle. and of course, see those hostages come home very, very soon. So an end to this war would be something that all of Israel would like to see, the international community would love to see. But again, it's going to take much more to deal and negotiate with these terrorists.
Now, still with Hezbollah, Lisa, one of their rockets killed an 18-year-old Israeli as he was working in an agricultural field in Israel. This is one of the 150 missiles that were launched by the terrorist group on Wednesday.
Right. And if you think about it, Hal, 150 missiles, it's not, it's not for lack of trying. I mean, the fact that they have launched so many missiles, we cannot excuse or justify the actions of these terrorists, whether it's Hezbollah or Hamas or the Houthis or Iran's regime that launched hundreds of missiles from Iran's soil into Israel. We cannot justify that because there were no or fewer casualties, or that Israel's defense technology is at a certain level. That does not excuse the fact that hundreds of missiles are being lobbed into the country every single day. What it does is it underscores the case for the international community supporting and giving Israel the resources, the money, the weaponry, whatever they need to continue fighting this fight for the rest of the world. Because what it comes down to is terrorists versus those of us who are not terrorists, because we know that they would kill any single one of us. And this war is just expanding daily, whether it's inside Canada, inside the United States. We see pro-Hamas, pro-Hezbollah protests. And again, very, very worrisome. And I know you talked about, these operatives going across the border from Canada into the United States, vice versa. And the fact that this ideology exists and continues to spread.
China may face a squeeze on supplies of cheap Iranian crude oil, which make up around 13% of imports by the world's biggest buyer of oil, China. That's if Donald Trump ramps up enforcement of sanctions on Tehran once he returns to the White House.
Right. And that's one thing that's very, very important in the equation here. Both China and Iran's regime very much worried about the policies that will, again, turn back to what it was under Trump, which was high sanctions, not allowing Iran to sell its oil, not allowing the Islamic Republic to collect on that money. They have sold north of $100 billion worth of oil to partners like China and others, weapons to Russia, weapons to North Korea. And what has it done? Gone on a terror spree. That money hasn't gone to the Iranian people. It's gone right into the pockets of Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and others. Paid for its weapons program, paid for its nuclear program, which it continues marching forward with. So again, these sanctions being very, very important, and enforcing those sanctions being even more important to stop them and to really change the landscape of the Middle East just by having the correct posture and policies in place from the White House.
She's our foreign affairs expert and U.S. political reporter, Lisa Daftari. Thanks again for joining us today from Los Angeles.
Thank you for having me.